Well, good morning. Thank everyone for taking the time to be with us today, and I'd like to be able to call this hearing to order. To bolster our economy, Congress recognizes that it is essential, when possible, to reduce barriers to small business growth. One area where small businesses consistently feel that barriers exist is accessing capital. Capital is the lifeblood of a business. It's essential for the growth and expansion of every business. Without it, businesses are not able to develop products, services, and to be able to market themselves or to be able to hire employees. This is particularly true in rural areas where there are limited resources available for businesses. In light of this, Congress created the Small Business Administration 7A and 504 loan programs and the United States Department of Agriculture Business and Industry loan programs to help businesses access capital. Despite this effort to help entrepreneurs, the Government Accountability Office has found that overlap exists between these programs, potentially confusing people that they are intended to benefit and wasting scarce taxpayer resources. Along with identifying areas of overlap in government financial assistance programs, GAO has offered recommendations to the federal government agencies on best practices to ensure that programs are indeed meeting those goals. Progress in eliminating overlap, however, is dependent on the agencies placing a priority on implementing GAO's recommendations and best practices. Not only will this help agencies focus on programmatic improvements, but it will also provide entrepreneurs and government resource partners with a clear understanding of the goals of each program and how it can best work for local businesses. Unfortunately, the agencies have not taken the GAO's recommendations as seriously as we had hoped, and we still have 3 programs spread across 2 different federal agencies that can offer similar assistance in the form of government-guaranteed loans to similar beneficiaries, in this case, small businesses. Today, we are here to learn what steps agencies have taken to implement the GAO's recommendations to eliminate duplication in the federal guaranteed lending programs and what legislative changes, if any, are necessary to be able to assist these agencies in their efforts to eliminate overlap and duplication. With that, I'd like to again thank all of our witnesses for taking the time to be able to be here with us this morning, and I now yield to Ranking Member Murphy for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me for being a couple minutes late. I was at the prayer breakfast this morning, and beating the motorcade is quite a mission. I also want to thank the witnesses for being here with us all this morning and giving us an update on what Small Business Administration and the U.S. Department of Agriculture have done to reduce wasted taxpayer dollars as a result of duplicative programs. Mr. Scheer, I'm a big fan of the GAO and the work it does to evaluate our government's performance and stewardship of American resources. I was extremely concerned when I read the report from a couple years ago identifying 53 potentially overlapping programs across the SBA, USDA, Department of Commerce, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. A handful of these 53 were SBA and USDA loan programs, and I understand 2 agencies, along with the administration, have been working to improve coordination of programs and services. I am particularly interested to hear about these agencies' efforts in 2 areas. The first is performance measurement. GAO has made the case in a number of instances that agencies have been unable to produce consistent, reliable, and meaningful metrics on their program successes. This makes it incredibly difficult for an oversight body like Congress to make meaningful assessments and funding decisions. My second area of interest is how SBA and USDA are collaborating at the local level to improve services for private lenders and for businesses in need of loans. This is where the rubber meets the road. It makes no difference what strategies are devised or MOU signed at the headquarters level in Washington, D.C., if they're not effectively implemented across agencies at the local level. Now, almost 2 years after GAO's initial report was issued, I want to see how SBA and USDA services are more effectively helping businesses grow and generate new jobs. I again thank the witnesses and look forward to your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I believe you're all familiar with the timing lights that we have. Start out as green when there's 1 minute remaining. We'll turn yellow and then red, obviously, if you could conclude your testimony at that time. And if committee members do have an opening statement, I'd ask that it be submitted for the record. Our first witness is Bill Scheer, the Director of Financial Markets and Community Investment Team at the Government Accountability Office. The Financial Markets Team works to improve the effectiveness of regulatory oversight in financial and housing markets. Mr. Scheer is a frequent guest before the Small Business Committee and based on his audit work for the Small Business Administration. Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be able to be here with us this morning. We look forward to your testimony. Please begin.
Thank you. Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Murphy, and members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss our work on programs that provide financial assistance to entrepreneurs. In August 2012, we reported information on 52 programs at the Departments of Commerce, Housing and Urban Development and Agriculture, and the Small Business Administration. This statement is based on our report issued in 2012 and information we have received since from the 4 agencies and the Office of Management and Budget. In summary, we found the following. First, federal programs that offer financial support to entrepreneurs, including loans, are fragmented and overlap based on the type of support they are authorized to offer and the type of entrepreneur they are authorized to serve. The 4 agencies and OMB have taken steps to collaborate more. However, the 4 agencies have not implemented a number of good collaborative practices we have identified, such as establishing compatible policies and procedures to better support rural businesses. The GEPRA Modernization Act's cross-cutting framework requires that agencies collaborate in order to address issues such as economic development that transcends more than one agency, and it directs agencies to describe how they are working with each other to achieve their program goals. Without enhanced collaboration, agencies may not be able to make the best use of limited federal resources in the most effective and efficient manner, and small businesses may struggle to navigate these fragmented programs. Our second major point here is that while the 4 agencies collect at least some information on program activities, they do not track such information for many programs, a practice that is not consistent with government standards for internal controls. In addition, we found that the 4 agencies conducted program evaluations of 13 of the 30 financial assistance programs we reviewed. We found that SBA has conducted program evaluation studies on 5 of its 10 programs. We also found that USDA has evaluated 1 of its 8 financial assistance programs, but the study did not address the extent to which the program was achieving its mission. The GEPRA Modernization Act requires agencies to set and measure annual performance goals and recognizes the value of program evaluations because they can help agencies assess programs' effectiveness and improve program performance. Without more robust program information, agencies may not be able to administer programs in the most effective and efficient manner, and scarce resources may be going toward programs that are less effective. We recommended that the 4 agencies and OMB explore opportunities to enhance collaboration among programs, and that the 4 agencies track program information and conduct more program evaluations. Since our report was issued, OMB has established an interagency group, including Commerce, SBA, USDA, and others, that aims to streamline existing programs, improve cooperation among and within agencies, ease entrepreneurs' access to the programs, and increase data-based evaluations of program performance. SBA has told us that it had undertaken a modernization project for its resource partner data collection system. USDA has told us that it's completed initiatives to improve the quality of performance measurement. Going forward, we will continue to obtain updates on the agency's progress. We will report on the actions taken by the agencies as we do for other areas, including in our mandated work addressing federal programs with fragmentation, overlap, and duplication. Chairman Tipton and Ranking Member Murphy, this concludes my prepared statement. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer. Our next witness is Anne-Marie Malum, the Associate Administrator for Capital Access at the Small Business Administration. In this capacity, Ms. Malum is responsible for overseeing SBA's financial assistance programs, and prior to joining the SBA, Ms. Malum served as CEO and Director of Summit Bank in Eugene, Oregon. Appreciate you being here with us today, and please begin.
Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Murphy, and distinguished member of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify on SBA's ongoing work to expand access to capital for small businesses while enhancing collaboration and avoiding duplication with other government programs. I greatly appreciate this opportunity to discuss our lending products and successful partnerships. As a former community banker from a largely rural state, it is truly an honor to be before this subcommittee and alongside my colleagues from USDA and GAO. Together, we are committed to providing all entrepreneurs with the tools they need to start and grow companies and create jobs. Small businesses are the engine of our economy and one of our country's greatest assets. They employ half of the private sector workforce and create 2 out of every 3 net new private sector jobs. And we know that innovation is not limited to Boston and Silicon Valley. It's happening in rural and industrial communities from Florida to Colorado and in my home state of Oregon. That's why at SBA we're focused on reaching all entrepreneurs in every part of this country. In my role as Associate Administrator for Capital Access, I rely on my 30-year career in commercial lending to help SBA better support small businesses. It's our top priority to fill market gaps by providing access to capital to small firms whose financing needs would not be met without our guarantee. Our loan guarantee programs have made it possible for lenders to support more businesses in rural and underserved communities. In fiscal 2013, approximately 15% of all of our 7A loans and 16% of total dollars went to rural entrepreneurs. In order to reach even more small businesses in rural markets and ensure effective collaboration, SBA has signed several memorandums of understanding with other agencies, including USDA. Leveraging SBA's nationwide network of district offices and resource partners, as well as USDA's extensive footprint of field staff in nearly every county in America, we are able to advise potential small business borrowers and lenders on both SBA and USDA loan programs. Through our collaboration, we educate each other on our respective products and services, exchange marketing materials, and host joint lender training sessions. We've seen the benefits of our collaboration through the success of countless small businesses like the Maupin Market in Maupin, Oregon. In 2011, the only grocery store in this 500-person town was slated to close, which would have forced residents to travel over 40 miles to buy food. Fortunately, a local couple, Allison and Randy Bechtold, decided to reopen the store. Unable to obtain conventional financing, the Bechtolds turned to the local Small Business Development Center for help. The SBDC connected them with a community bank that identified SBA's 504 loan program and USDA Rural Development's intermediary relending program as strong matches for their capital needs. With a $279,000 SBA guaranteed loan and a separate loan for $100,000 through USDA's program, these entrepreneurs were able to remodel the old building and reopen the new Maupin Market. They created 7 good-paying jobs in the community and provided new opportunities for the local farmers. SBA also supports rural small businesses through our Small Loan Advantage, or SLA loans. One of our signature loan dollar loan programs, SLA is designed to expand access to loans up to $350,000. Drawing on extensive input from our lending partners, we significantly reduced the paperwork and simplified the application process for this program. In order to make these loans even more attractive and less costly for lenders, we allow banks to use their own collateral, closing, and dispersing guidelines. At SBA, we're committed to collaborating with our federal, regional, and state partners to fill market gaps and ensure that all entrepreneurs have the resources and training they need to turn great ideas into growing businesses. By taking an inclusive view of entrepreneurship, one that expands access and opportunity to more communities, we can spur new business formation, innovation, job creation, and help build strong regional economies throughout America. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malin, for your testimony. Our final witness is Lillian Salerno, Administrator for the Rural Business Cooperative Services within the Office of Rural Development at the United States Department of Agriculture. Ms. Salerno was first appointed as Acting Administrator in September of 2012 and became Administrator in July of 2013. Prior to joining the Rural Business Cooperative Service, Ms. Salerno served as Special Assistant in the Rural Housing Services. Welcome to Small Business Subcommittee, and thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. Please continue.
Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Murphy, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to discuss USDA's Business and Industry Guaranteed Loan Program. and the economic opportunity it provides to rural America. I'm pleased to report that outreach and collaboration and leveraging of resources, both nationally and at the local level, are top priorities for this administration and are at the center of the USDA delivery system. As a former entrepreneur and rural small business owner, I am particularly aware of the value of federal financial assistance programs. In fact, the company I started in 1994 began with an SBIR grant and still employs approximately 150 persons in rural North Texas and supports additional jobs for suppliers and distributors in this small town. We appreciate the other agencies' programs provide to assist rural businesses. While both the B&I program and the SBA 7A program seek to ensure small businesses have capital, Congress has determined that B&I serves the distinct purpose of providing resources to rural businesses that have greater individual capital needs. Let me emphasize the distinguishing feature of our program is providing assistance to businesses in those rural communities. Working with local lenders in rural communities, the B&I program is a critical component to increasing opportunities for rural Americans. Our field staff has worked closely with SBA offices for many years. The MOU signed late last year extended and broadened these opportunities for collaboration. USDA and SBA work together to identify the best funding options for businesses. For example, the Iowa Cold Storage Company in Altoona, Iowa recently needed capital to expand their business. Although USDA had previously provided a $17 million B&I loan to the company for the construction of the warehouse cold storage facility, USDA and SBA determined that the best option now for the company was a $3 million SBA loan to accomplish this mission and expansion. By working together, our agencies are able to increase access to private investment capital for small businesses. Since the GAO report, we have improved the process for tracking, verifying, and reporting of the performance measures. We've issued and put into action a guidance document to our field offices. We've implemented an improved process for reviewing and verifying the data, and we've created a standardized format for reporting this data. Furthermore, because of the budget certainty you've afforded us, we are now able to make additional improvements, including IT enhancements, making it easier for our lenders and intermediaries to report our requested performance measures. In sum, no other federal agency is positioned as well as we are at USDA to meet the needs of rural America. Our extensive physical presence in rural communities distinguishes us from other federal agencies. We have the expertise and experience about the economic, social, and geographical characteristics of the rural communities to better serve them. Through our 47 state offices and 400 local offices and service centers, we overcome the physical distance barriers that alone can hinder service delivery in these areas. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you. Alongside my colleagues from SBA and GAO, we are committed to helping entrepreneurs and businesses succeed. I welcome the chance to engage in a dialogue, and thank you for your support of rural business programs, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks so much. We'll start out with the questioning, and I'd like to begin with Director Scheer. Based on your audit, can a small business located in a rural area obtain financial assistance from either the SBA's 7A program or the SBA's 504 program through the USDA and the Business Industry Loan Program?
The answer is generally yes, that the 7A program funds a broad range of activities, including working capital. The 504 program is more specific in that it finances fixed assets, so it's kind of a smaller subset. Business and industry loans are available for a very broad range of activities. So the idea is that they certainly overlap in terms of the types of financial assistance they can provide.
Okay, so we've got the two different programs, and this may well be a better question maybe for our administrators. Do we have a streamlining process in terms of those applications? Because one of the great challenges that we hear from small businesses is the confusing nature of actually trying to be able to access capital, even though the intent of the programs is obviously good. Ms. Mellon?
Chairman Tipton. I'd like to answer that from the lender perspective. Most of my career has been in the private sector as a lender, and then as a chief credit administrator, and then as a CEO of a bank. And the reality from that perspective was that it was very helpful when we sometimes had more than one option to help a small business that we couldn't finance with conventional underwriting. If we had a customer that clearly we believed they were going to be successful, but we couldn't do it with our underwriting guidelines, they didn't have enough experience maybe or enough capital or whatever the deficit was, then we would look to the SBA or the USDA programs. And sometimes we had both options, not always, but I always felt that was complementary. And it was helpful in some cases, like the example that I mentioned, where we could use a combination. So I feel like from a lender standpoint, it's not a negative issue. It's a positive situation.
I'd just like to add, as a small business person, when one goes to get financing, the bank is your intermediary, right? And so, for example, that suite of services is what really, the bank's education about our suite of services, and that's what we're committed to do. We've been doing a good job. I think we can do a better job, and we're committed to do that. But I'll give you one example in Colorado, Chairman, and we closed a $1.8 million guaranteed loan program with a company called White Rock Specialties, and that the bank that we were working with was a community bank, and the company also needed a working capital, and the SBA for that had, with our field staff, worked with the bank and was given a cap line of credit for $250,000. So we have examples of those kind of things, and we believe that's working.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the SBA and the USDA signed a MOU on August 22nd, 2013, and I'd like to know, in your view, does this agreement clearly define what steps the agencies will take to be able to eliminate duplication?
The MOU is a positive step. We've looked for the use of other practices with clearly defined roles and responsibilities, strategies for leveraging resources. There's some other qualities we look for in terms of the engagement. We know from USDA for a number of years, even preceding our August 2012 report, has reached out to its state offices to report on what collaboration do you have with local SBA district offices. So it seems like there's enough activity that what I'll call check the box, and there is interaction going on. As the witness said, there are joint training type sessions going on, but in terms of duplication to the degree that it might exist, but certainly in dealing with fragmented programs, we're looking for some movement to try to address how can these programs be better positioned so that if they are complementary, they're complementing each other in the right way. If they substitute for each other, which are the ones how do you get businesses to be served by the program that can serve them best?
So you aren't seeing any movement?
We aren't seeing a lot of evidence. And so for example, part of this mandate, as I said, as an agency, we reach out to agencies for what actions they've taken, and just taken from the last submissions that we've received very recently from SBA and USDA. It isn't like there isn't anything in those submissions that would suggest to us that anything more than that they are tracking how many offices are collaborating with each other. We don't see movement or any suggestions as far as coming up with joint strategies or trying to coordinate policies and procedures that could make the programs serve rural areas better.
Right. Thank you. Are you working on joint strategies?
Yes. Thank you for the question. We're doing, as Mr. Scheer said, we're doing a variety of joint trainings and webinars, and I think part of the challenge for us is we're field-based. We do best when we don't do things from up here, when we do stuff in the States. And so we really rely on our district offices and our field offices to work out those. So for us to give a one direction from Washington about how to work in rural Colorado or rural Missouri, we think is a mistake. And so we do let our field offices work out these strategies, but we do ask them to report, and we've got, very good evidence, which we've submitted to Mr. Scheer, regarding those roundtables and joint lender trainings.
I want to be respectful of our other members here. I'll probably like to be able to come back to this, but I would like to follow up again real quickly with Mr. Scheer. In your testimony, you stated that you were not able to access data to determine whether duplication actually exists. What data do you need that is not available, and why is it not collected?
Especially with respect to duplication, one thing is, I know the focus today is on financial assistance programs. But what we have found on counseling and training programs, and what we have found just generally with what happens when somebody walks into an SBA district office or a USDA state office, is that what kind of information is available on who's coming in where. So basically, a lot of times it's which office a small business owner might walk into, which will determine what financial assistance program they're participating in. So it's what we're looking. So what is collected on technical assistance in terms of who's being served, geographic location, some characteristics, would be very useful on that. From a standpoint of the financial assistance programs themselves, the way I would characterize it for SBA, SBA has at its disposal extremely rich data on who is being served, where they're being served. We have certainly used SBA loan level data to do all kinds of things with geocoding data. So data for the SBA financial assistance programs is not a problem. It is the question of the willingness to use it in collaboration with efforts with USDA. With USDA, we asked ourselves when we did this work, should we be asking for loan level data from USDA to try to geocode like we have for SBA and try to look at who is serving where? Specifically, the USDA data on the financial assistance programs like business and industry loans is very granulated. It's quite good in that sense. But the way it is collected, we question whether the data is collected in a way. You can run ad hoc reports, but we question whether it's collected in such a way that it would really be conducive to say who is serving where in rural defined areas. So I think USDA has further to come in that respect from SBA. SBA, it's more of, I think, a willingness to use the data it has at its disposal.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask one more and then yield to the ranking member and then come back after the other members have asked their questions. But Mr. Scheer, the SBA recently decided to end several pilot programs, including one aimed at being able to reach out to rural businesses. I'd noted, in the testimony that it was at 15%. That's a drop. Was this pilot program effective at reaching small businesses in rural areas?
Here, are you referring to Rural Advantage?
Yes.
Yes. I can't answer that question. And I don't know how well SBA can answer that question. The pilot program we recently looked at was a pilot program to serve, called Patriot Express, to serve the veteran community. One of the things that we observe when SBA does have pilot programs or initiatives like this is that there really isn't the evaluation around who is being served by the program. So like with Rural Advantage, it's here that there can be reasons why USDA might be able to serve certain rural areas better than SBA. And this is part of why we think at the national level there should be more collaboration looking at who the programs are serving. The problem with SBA going into Rural Advantage is the idea that it might be trying to expand its presence in an area without first asking the question, working with USDA and working with this committee and the Congress in terms of saying, where should we be placing our resources? who should we be serving? Because otherwise, you're kind of acting with incomplete information when you're introducing more programs and more initiatives.
Okay. You have any comment on that?
Chairman Tipton, I would like to mention this Small Rural Loan Advantage Program. It was a program that started initially only for lenders that did a few loans, which would imply that they were in rural areas. And it was a little clunky. It wasn't as streamlined. We actually have morphed that program into a much more streamlined loan called Small Loan Advantage, which I talked about. And I do have statistics on how those loans have grown and how they've also grown in the rural area. So basically, we've just made improvements to that program. We also have studied immensely our programs, including the veterans programs, as to who they serve and how effective they are and how do we make them more effective. And we're doing that work all the time.
Okay. Is there some concern, and then I will wrap up here, but I'm a little concerned, on the rural lending, it dropped from 25% of the portfolio to 15% of the portfolio. What's the reason for the decline?
I would have to, that is information that I would be happy to go look for and bring back to you.
I think, it's going back to your original testimony, being able to reach out into the rural communities, noting the job creation, the potential, and the entrepreneurship that is there. That kind of a drop, I think there's some concern in terms of some of the access to be able to grow these businesses. And
Right.
coming out of a rural area, I can tell you we're still in a recession.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure it's a drop in total dollars. You said it was a drop in our portfolio. It might be that we're growing in other areas more. So I would like to get back to you on that.
Okay,
That's an important question.
And is it your sense that these rural small businesses now have greater access to capital?
Then
Before.
5 years ago, yes. I would say yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. With that, I'll yield to Ranking Member Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Scheer, when you were with us last March, you noted the importance of key metrics and data points to really evaluate some of the programs, see what's working, what's not working. I'm wondering, from Ms. Salona first, if you could talk about some of the key metrics that you use at USDA and perhaps how long you've been using them and what you think about how it's going.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. We use the data, first of all, to determine if we are meeting certain benchmarks, such as reaching underserved populations, if we're complying with our initiatives. So, for example, local foods is an initiative, growing the bioeconomy is a local initiative. So we have about 62 data points. We use it to also help reduce waste, fraud, and abuse by conducting cross-program verification. But, our data and our data collection system is based on a GLS system, a guaranteed loan system, where we rely on banks to give us the information. And so they have their 62 data points. And so the question is whether or not we can get access to that data. That's a lot of data for the history of a loan, so say a 25 to 30-year loan. So what we're storing it in is a guaranteed loan system. We analyze it on a monthly to quarterly basis, depending on what we're looking for. We can run a report either in a spreadsheet form, or we can ask for how many local food, for our Secretary of the Local Food Initiative is very important. We can find out how many local food initiatives we're doing in Colorado or Missouri or Florida. But with budget certainty, we certainly can improve what we're doing. And with budget certainty, part of our objective is to enhance these IT systems. And one of our hires is going to be a data integrity person, because we have not been able to put the kind of funds into that part of the operation.
So you're more concerned with the data collection than you are the analysis of the data?
Yes.
Okay.
And what we have done in response to the hearing last year is we've had an opportunity to go back and verify the data. So, we do, whatever, a little less than 400 or about 420 loans in 2013. When we were given the data, we were looking for an opportunity to make sure that it was consistent with what kind of investments were made. And then we sent anything that fell outside the norm back to the states and to the lenders and to validate. And now we have that data cleaned up, and we now are using that kind of operation for our 2014 data. And I'd just like to add that because of our field presence, we're able to go and validate. So that field person can go and drive by and make sure that manufacturer does indeed have the 200 jobs that they that they submitted that they were going to create.
Okay. Ms. Malem, can you talk about some of the metrics that you use and that have been successful?
Could you specify
Some of
exactly what
the
you're
key
asking?
metrics you use to evaluate SBA. GAO pointed out this morning and then last March that that's one of the keys to.
If the programs are successful?
Yes.
One of the things that we measure pilot programs against is just the amount of lending that we do on our flagship programs, the 7A Guarantee Program and the 504 program. One of the things that we found in our Veterans Initiative, Veterans Express, that did sunset because we have a better loan now for veterans called Small Business SBA Veterans Advantage Loan, is that we found that in those pilot programs, there would be something about them that wasn't as attractive or workable for the borrower or the lender. And so we track the totals, we talk to bankers, we talk to borrowers, and if the programs aren't growing, we look for ways to either enhance them and fix them or modify existing programs to fill that gap.
So how often do you analyze that data? Is that a monthly or is that
weekly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? It just depends. We are looking at. One of the things I was very, very pleasantly surprised, not surprised, I really didn't have a preconceived notion, but when I came to the SBA 6 months ago, how much data is collected and analyzed and reviewed consistently, constantly. There's an amazing amount of analysis of data that goes on there.
And are you working with the USDA on what's working, what's not working?
We are definitely working with them in terms of in the field of the programs, what are working together, where are they complementary. We do share marketing materials. This last MOU has put more, as Mr. Scheer has said, it's put more specifics into how we collaborate, and that's been an evolving process, and I feel like they're making very good progress there.
I don't want to oversimplify it too much, but Mr. Scheer, it seems you would like more data points, more analysis, more key metrics to analyze. And Ms. Salerno, you pointed out some of the best improvements you've had have been really at the local level, some of the training. Is there a bridge there that needs to be crossed? I mean, I can completely understand at the local level, that is where the rubber meets the road. So, of course, that's where you would see the biggest difference in inputting all the data and knowing it's a nuisance and reviewing it. But that's how Mr. Scheer and us get to review it. Have you had that discussion?
Yes, we have. Lots of discussion. I mean, if we had all the resources in the world, would we put more money there? Yes, we would. Where we were able to, we did the sort of way of making sure that the data was correct. So we literally had a session where our leadership sat with the files and that were inputted and said, if there was a zero and we had given a $1 million loan, why didn't that create a job? And so we went back to make sure that it had. So we just looked at what fell out of the norm. We think with the budget certainty that now we're able to allocate resources, and we feel very confident that we're going to do better. And I've been speaking a lot to my associate administrator colleague and about ways I can learn from them. But we have not had those resources to concentrate on the Washington side. We've been depending on our field staff, which have done the best job that they can with the resources they have had.
Can you use SBA's data systems and analysis? Are the systems integrated?
My understanding is they are not integrated.
The systems are not integrated, but we are, as I think someone mentioned early on, we are involved, both of us. I haven't been personally involved with it, but one of my deputies has been involved with a meeting of several agencies, which is working on this issue of data sharing, making it. It's not that we don't share data. If anybody asks us for data, we give it to them, but they're trying to come up with systems to make that data sharing as part of the process, and I know that that's ongoing.
Mr. Scheer, anything to add? No.
And I think that what the Associate Administrator is referring to is the OMB working group that's addressing these issues. And as I said in my statement, that the OMB-led group is addressing the types of issues that we think should be addressed. So we think it's very positive that this working group has been put into place. What we haven't seen yet is progress on making it. So I'd say here is that we we look forward to working with OMB and the agencies as far as how can they facilitate a more strategic approach to, in this case, the topic of this hearing, serving rural areas in terms of small businesses in rural areas seeking financial assistance. So we certainly hope it moves in that direction. So far, we know that there are meetings that have occurred. We haven't seen, kind of like a real framework established yet, but that's what we're looking forward and hoping evolves over time. We just haven't. We just don't have evidence of it yet. One disappointment I'll just state with the two agencies here is we received, feedback from OMB when we reached out what progress has been made, but we just find it surprising that when SBA and USDA came back with us for information, what has occurred, there was no reference to that task group. So I certainly hope that both agencies and all the agencies involved with OMB are really committed to what the purpose of that task group really is about and that they make progress.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Now recognize Mr. Luchtenmeyer for his question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I come from a town of 300 people, so that don't get any more rural than that. So this is an important hearing to me from the standpoint of being able to help the small businesses and agricultural folks in my district. Mr. Scheer, do you get a lot of complaints with regards to these two agencies, with regards to the lack of their ability to address rural access to credit concerns?
I wouldn't call it complaints. It isn't like you have people who are seeking loans that they call up that, like GAO is the the complaint line.
But about the collaboration, you're talking about the overlap. Do you get complaints from different groups, different entities, saying, hey, these programs are nice, but they're not working very well?
What we got and is reported, in our report, we really did an extensive effort to reach out to rural areas, in particular areas that are served by the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Delta Appalachian Authority, the Delta Regional Authority, and other entities involved in rural economic development. What we found and what they were reporting to us was the difficulty, especially with counseling and training type resources, how hard it is for small businesses to navigate those areas. So I'd say that was the major concern that we heard as an outgrowth of really reaching out to those who represent rural areas.
Ms. Salerno, you made a comment a while ago with regards to the validation and I guess basically oversight over the funds that are either given out or guaranteed. Can you give me a little bit of an insight as to your process? Do you work with the lending institution and they take the lead and therefore they do all of the underwriting, they do all of the servicing of this? What part do you play or what action do you take in this whole process that allows some oversight by you, or are you totally relying on them?
Thank you for the question. We're very fortunate that we have our field offices and they go through the entire process with the business, with the lender. But we're, of course, the guarantee for the lender. So the lender has the paperwork at the state level. We, of course, want everything to happen at the state level, not to have to come up to Washington and delay these loans from happening. It only comes up to D.C. when there's a certain dollar amount. And so the business program officer works through the loan documents with the business, which is really important in rural America where folks maybe have special needs because of the density and the low density of population. Sometimes they need to work with the city in order to, or the small town in order to get easements or ways to work with the rural co-op. There's just all kinds of needs there. That's why our field structure is so important. And what happens from the data that's given by the bank is it's self-reported. So the bank says, the business tells the bank, I need a $5 million loan. I'm going to put manufacturing into small town Missouri. I'm going to create, 100 jobs over the next, 2 years. That's self-reported. And then it comes back to us, and then we validate that up at the national office, and then we check back.
Coming from the financial services community, as I recall, you have a checklist that you go through that the institution has to complete to be able to do things. I think it's the same way with SBA, if I'm not mistaken. So there is some coordination there. I was just kind of curious from the standpoint that, it's very important that you continue to work with and verify and provide some oversight, because at the end of the day, we've got taxpayer dollars at risk here. And so the lending institution probably has a better feel for what's going on there, but certainly interaction is very important. One of the, as I was listening to the previous discussion here, one of the concerns that I had was the collection and review of data. And, it's wonderful to get that, but if we don't act on it, what good is it? And it sounds like in the last discussion we talked about this committee that was put together, and apparently there's some reaction to some of that information that was collected. Can you elaborate on it just a little bit, Ms. Malum?
Can I elaborate on what's happening with that committee?
Yeah, you had
committee?
A committee that had we were kind of working on some issues here, and I think there was an inference that there was actually something being done.
My understanding that committee is working on this data issue of how to connect databases, how to utilize data and share the data so that we can use it more comprehensively.
But there's some action, I guess.
My understanding is those meetings are
on the recommendations and the findings of the committee.
Yes.
Okay. I got one more question before I'm out of time here. If I indulge the chairman just 1 second. Question for the two administrators. Each of your programs have caps as to how much you can guarantee per loan and what you have per program. Are those caps adequate? Are you utilizing the full amount of the money that's at your disposal? Should they be lowered? Do you have excess funds, or should they be raised? Just a comment.
I'm happily answer that. We get out all of our money. The rural sector needs more money. There is a huge issue about access to capital. That's what we hear at these roundtables, and that kind of information we want to be able to give back to you is that there's still issues.
Of the percentage of good loans that are applied for, how many do you not make because you're out of funds or can't guarantee?
Two things. One, thank you for the question. One is I'm not sure I can give you that information, but I'll do my best, and I'll have to supplement that.
Round figures. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Well, the issue is because of the last year and the uncertainty of funding, there was a lot of starting and stopping, and that was really hurtful to small businesses in rural America. So now with this certainty of funding, I think I'll be able to answer that better. I just don't want to give you not information, but we had businesses that were hurt because we didn't have a pipeline of funds.
Ms. Malin, could you?
I think our levels are at the right levels right now. We haven't had to recently not make loans because of capital levels.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Mr. Mulvaney? No questions? Okay. I would like to be able to follow up just a little bit, because I would like to get down basically to the focus of the purpose of the hearing. You've demonstrated that you're serving a need, being able to help small businesses in a variety of different areas. But when we go back to the crux of the hearing, the GAO had made recommendations. The financial assistance programs and the report of the GAO, that was released in August of 2012. That's been over a year and a half ago. Following this, our committee held a progress report hearing a year ago where your agencies testified about your commitment to being able to increase the collaboration. And we're back here again today asking what is being done to address the collaboration and to be able to actually respond to the GAO's actual recommendations. Are we making progress as opposed to continuing just to hold meetings and to be able to get our people together? What's the goal? What's the timeline? When is it going to be able to be achieved? Ms. Salerno or Ms. Malin?
I'll answer to the best of my ability. My understanding is that the MOU is a 3-year MOU with a possibility to renew. I may be incorrect on that. But we are continuing to work on all the issues in the MOU. It's about 6 or 7 months old. We have definitely made progress in the field where they are doing joint trainings. We are sharing marketing materials and all that. And I feel like this is an MOU that is being taken very seriously at the SBA, and we're all in agreement with it. It's the right thing to do. We are very proud that the 7A program is a zero subsidy program, and we want it to continue and be sustainable, and it'll be more effective as long as we can continue to do it cost effectively and collaboratively.
Ms. Salerno?
I think we'll have a, thanks for the question. I think we'll have a better opportunity. You know, I can't promise anything. All I can do is we're doing the best we can with the information that we have. But I do think because of this this consistent meeting that's going on about the technical assistance and trying to set metrics that's being really shepherded by OMB, which all of our agencies participate in. I think then they've got some pilots going on, so we'll get that information. But for what we know how to do with our two programs for the business and industry loan and the SB 7A, I think we've made a commitment to make sure that we share data. We want to learn at USDA if there's a better way to collect data that's more in line with theirs. We want to learn that. But we do have challenges. But I do think because of the budget certainty, we'll be better able to address this.
Well, just to be able to get a specific, can you point, because you've been collaborating, you've been talking about it, what duplication have you identified?
I'd like to answer that by saying we haven't. I'm not aware that we have specifically asked that question at a broad strategic level. I think that's the questions. Those are the questions we've been working on in the field.
This point, though, of the GAO report, we were talking about duplication.
As I mentioned when I first started, there's duplication and there's complementary products, and you know, I don't think there's an exact duplication of specific product that is really the issue, and I've misunderstood that, if that's what we're talking about.
Do you have any comment, Mr. Scherer?
In our work, we didn't find any evidence of duplication, meaning that you had multiple programs, multiple agencies undertaking the same activities, serving the same beneficiaries, and it doesn't mean that duplication doesn't exist. We didn't find it. There are issues over how well, from an internal control standpoint, the agencies are following where the services are going. And again,
that's the point of the question.
And that's basically, so that's basically where we don't know. What we do observe for sure is that it just seems like there's inefficiencies associated with overlap and fragmentation and the inability to kind of evaluate how programs are serving their missions. And that's really a major focus of us, and we certainly hope, and it seems to be a focus of this OMB-led working group.
Well, and I think we have business people that sit on this panel, obviously, coming out, and you're always looking to be able to create those efficiencies, to be able to streamline it, to make sure that you aren't getting overlap, not trying to go after the same customers, I guess, if you will. And during this process now, over this last year and a half, in terms of trying to be able to identify, be able to get some of this collaboration going on, do you have any kind of a number of what we've been able to save the American taxpayer in terms of dollars through your efforts?
That's a really good question, and I would like to go back and see if we can tackle that. That would be an interesting question to look at, because certainly that would be something that we'd all be, you know, wanting to know, and that's what we're all working towards.
Are you aware of any, Ms. Salerno?
I mean, from a USDA perspective, I mean, we look at duplication and strengthening of services, and the Secretary's Vilsack's been very robust on his cost savings measures, which he's reported as $1.2 billion in tax dollars for the agency regarding just streamlining of services. So our continued regionalization and ability to deliver services by streamlining at USDA, that's the only number that I know to give you.
And would like to follow up, Mr. Lichtenmeyer brought up, I had the opportunity to sit on a bank board before, and we had, with the loan officers, there is a checklist. And Ms. Salerno, you'd mentioned that at the district offices you're having to be able to count on these folks to be able to create some awareness. Is that an actual checklist item for the district offices when they're working with local lenders, saying, hey, here are the programs that are available, And by the way, the USDA has these programs that are available. Is that being done as an actual checklist item for your people in the field?
Most of, thanks for the question. If I'm understanding the question correctly, then at our USDA program level, our program officers in the field, they've made contact with their SBA counterparts and they have their suite of services. So yes, it would be something where we show all of SBA's loan programs as well as ours. And I mean, I've been to enough of those meetings. That's for sure going on. That's for sure at the state and local level. That's going on.
Okay, and that's being expressed fully to the lenders, to the private lenders.
That's been where we've really been the most successful, because remember, for the rural space, those lenders, I mean, those big banks aren't coming to rural Colorado, right? They're not there to give that capital. So what SBA's been doing very well for our folks is, for rural folks, which I know they care about also, is to make sure some of those big banks know about the rural services that we do and vice versa. And mostly those community banks now know about the SBA services, our services, and are able to help the customer more.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, just out of for some curiosity. On the USDA, it doesn't, to my understanding at least, track loans based on the size of a business. And in order for it to be able to eliminate duplication and overlap in our rural areas, would this information be useful to determine how many small businesses utilize the USDA as opposed to the SBA resources?
I'm hoping I'm understanding the question, Chairman. The USDA, when we're tracking the size, we have a number of projected jobs that will come out of any kind of loan that we do, right? And so we're able to monitor that, and do monitor that, because we monitor the financial statements that are given to the bank, or that then are given to us, of that business that we've given a loan to.
Yeah, and I think, the other component of this is strictly the size even of a business. We talked about the 1.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
A little bigger business than, some others. Is that information being tracked as well?
We certainly have the size of the business, but you're absolutely right. We help not just small businesses. I mean, we've helped businesses that have, 500,000 employees in rural America, because we do manufacturing loans. So when you're asking if we track it, we track the number of employees. I don't know if we're tracking it in the same way that SBA is, but I can get back with you on that and submit that.
I'd appreciate that. And I guess my last question is, we've got a note here that November of 2012, the USDA reported to GAO that over the next 2 years, the USDA would conduct a broader analysis of its program data to assess program impact. And we're now in 2014. That started in 2012. Can you just give us a status report of that effort?
Yes. We've done what I described, was we've just, because of our budgets, we have not been able to put the kind of resources toward that. It's in our budget now to put those kind of resources, so we're still working on it. We have put into action the guidance document that I talked about and tried to make it more standardized, but we have not put the resources toward the IT enhancements that will allow us to do, I think, what we reported in 2012.
Okay, so we basically from 2012, we hadn't made any real progress, and just starting now to really move on it.
I believe that we made progress by actually validating the data, which we did in 2013, and we did have advised our field offices to make sure that they complied with the guidance document, but we certainly can improve and plan on.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all, unless any of our other members have any questions. I'd like to thank you for participating today. One of the big issues I think we all have a responsibility for those of us that are serving here in Washington is to be looking out for the American taxpayer. And that's the idea of trying to be able to address some of the concerns that have been put forward by the GAO and make sure we move beyond meetings into action on behalf of those taxpayers, because when we're talking about budgets, the best way to be able to have the resources is to be able to assure the American people that we're doing the very best we can to be able to not only grow the economy, but be able to handle those limited resources well. So do thank all of you for taking the time to be participants with us here today. We know that capital is critical for these small businesses in our rural areas, and these programs can play an incredibly important role in helping businesses access that capital. However, these programs that confuse businesses and owners and waste taxpayer resources, I believe we can agree that it simply can't be tolerated. Agencies need to be able to find a way to be able to work together. And I hope today's hearing shows some of the importance of being able to bring together the issues and some of the challenges in terms of programs that are offered by the USDA and the SBAs and their efforts to be able to implement those GAO recommendations into best practices for true collaboration. With that, I'd ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to be able to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. And with that, this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.